You're watching CTOM TV. Knowledge is power. Rosemary says, how do I access compassionate use with clinical trials?
Well, that's a great question. Unfortunately, in Canada, there's no real way that patients and doctors, for that matter, can access clinical trials. There's a real reluctance to use them in Canada. I'm not sure where that all comes from. I think they're definitely a big thing in the States. One of the important things with any clinical trial is you have to have the molecular features that specific drug targets. Now, every drug that's being tested these days is unique to targeting a certain set of molecular features. They can be applied to a trial that is unique to the type of cancer you have and patients that have those molecular features, or it can be applied to a basket trial of many different types of cancers that all have that same molecular feature. So I think what's important is that you find out what your molecular features are before you start looking for clinical trials. Determine what are going to be the best for you, and then contact the drug companies, contact them yourselves, contact the clinical trials yourself. Now, in Canada, the clinical trial coordinators will not talk to patients, they'll only talk to doctors. And it's very difficult for doctors to get through to them. There's a lot of back and forth phone chasing. And most doctors just don't have the time for that. But you can do a lot of background research for your doctor. You can really expedite the process and make their job easier by providing a list of clinical trials and contacts that you would like. And you can get those from clinicaltrials.gov. You can type that in. It's the master list of all clinical trials on an international level. And you can type in the mutation you're looking for, which is the best way to do it. And it will give you a list, and then you can go by the different countries. And you can also contact some of these trials and ask if they will be able to do a trial by distance. For example, if it's an oral medication, maybe they can send it to you and you can do it at home if you're not able to access the hospital. Typically, you'll need some sort of supervision, though. So you'll have to have a doctor or an oncologist supervise you. But often the drug companies are quite open to letting patients try certain drugs if they have the defined molecular feature for the drug.
Mm-hmm. So really what you're saying is it starts with the genetic testing, yes. Find out, because that is, again, how clinical trials are stratified these days, yes. It's for this mutation or that mutation, exactly. Or a combination of certain mutations. Yeah. So you'd have to prove that you were the right person for that trial. You're right. There's a fair amount of paperwork and lots of calls. And one of the things that myself and my team do is help find clinical trials for our clients. And there's a lot of calls that have to be made, lots of voicemails that need to be left. Because these aren't businesses you're calling. These are kind of research labs out of universities and things like that who are trying to field these trials.
They're not designed for patient intake. Typically.
No, not really. So, but what we can do, certainly, as Alex is suggesting, is you can get all the data that you need from the clinical trial, get all the paperwork filled in. So essentially all your doctor has to do is sign it and forward it for you. And we find that while it takes a little bit of extra legwork, it's highly successful. And most doctors are very happy to support this idea if you can show that it will benefit you. They just don't necessarily have the time for all of the administration.
Yeah, and with clinical trials, you'll see many different hospitals offering it. Some will be accepting patients, some won't. Definitely, you want to call those individually. We've seen cases where the trials had such a hard time being able to get patients with that particular mutation that they're willing to fly the patient in, pay for their hotel, pay for their treatment, just so they can continue the trial.
Yeah.
So and a lot you never know until you ask.
No, it's true. And a lot of times people can actually get access to the drugs that are a part of a trial through their doctor without having to travel as well. Yeah. So there's so many possibilities in cancer care right now. It's really a matter, it's kind of like who you know and
how much work you want to put in.
And what questions you know that you need to ask, and yes, how much you want to advocate for yourself. Thank you for watching Ketome TV. Subscribe below and stay informed.